There is a specific kind of invisible that has nothing to do with being unseen. People saw me fine. They looked right at me, said my name correctly, handed me documents to sign. I existed in every practical sense. I just never existed in the way that mattered, the way that made someone pause mid-sentence and think, him. I want him specifically. My name is Park Siwon. I am 26 years old. I am an Omega. And for the past 2 years, I have been registered as a contingency match in the Jung family's formal pairing arrangement, which is a very clean, bureaucratic way of saying, if everything falls apart, you'll do. I knew what I was. I signed the contract with both eyes open. The compensation was good, the terms were respectful, and I had learned early in life not to waste energy being hurt by honest things. The world sorts people. Some get chosen first. Some get chosen when there's no one else left. I had made peace with being the second kind. Then, on a Thursday morning in March, Lee Ji-han blew the entire arrangement into pieces, and he did not do it quietly. I found out the same way everyone else did. Online. A photo, then a headline, then 17 follow-up articles within the hour. Ji-han spotted at Incheon Airport with unidentified foreign alpha. Jung engagement officially dead. There were photos of them holding hands at the departure gate. Ji-han was smiling in a way I had never seen him smile at official events. Loose, unguarded, real. I sat with my phone in my lap for a long time. I did not feel happy for him, exactly. But I understood it, the way you understand a thunderstorm. Some things simply have to break before something honest can grow. My phone rang at noon. Jung family legal. Mr. Park. As per Clause 7 of the contingency agreement, we are formally activating your arrangement file. Jung Haeon has been informed. We'd like to arrange an introductory meeting at your earliest convenience. I looked at the half-eaten bowl of rice on my counter. How soon? I asked. Tomorrow if possible. Said yes. I hung up. I finished my rice. I told myself the small, cold feeling in my chest was just the air conditioning. The meeting was at a hotel restaurant. Private room, cedar-scented, aggressively neutral. I arrived 5 minutes early and spent those 5 minutes convincing myself that my hands weren't shaking, which they weren't, technically, but my body had that particular hum of someone waiting for something they can't prepare for. Jung Haeon walked in at exactly the scheduled time. I had seen photos. Everyone had seen photos. But photographs had not communicated the specific quality of his stillness. The way he moved through a room like he was conserving himself, like every gesture was deliberate and nothing was wasted. He was dressed simply. He looked exhausted in a way that expensive grooming couldn't quite cover. He looked like someone who had been publicly humiliated and had decided, with great personal effort, not to let it show. He sat down across from me and said, without any greeting, "You were at the announcement banquet 2 months ago, by the East Corridor." I blinked. You remember that? You were the only person in the room not drinking champagne. I didn't know what to do with that. So I set down my menu and said the most honest thing I could think of. I'm the spare. Something crossed his face, quick, like a flinch he caught halfway. That's not the language I would use. It's accurate though. I kept my voice light, not unkind. I'm not saying it to make you feel guilty. I'm saying it because I think we should be honest with each other from the start. You didn't choose me. I wasn't anybody's first thought. That's fine. I've built a perfectly functional life around being someone's second thought. He was quiet for a moment. Outside, I could hear the distant sound of the restaurant. Glasses, low conversation, the polished hum of a place where difficult things were discussed over good food. What do you want from this? He asked. Nothing you're not willing to give, I said. What do you want? He looked at me directly then. His eyes were dark and tired and more honest than I expected. I want to stop feeling like I'm failing at something, he said. I don't know. Something that doesn't feel like an obligation dressed up as a life. The words landed somewhere in my chest and sat there, warm and uncomfortable. I can work with that, I said quietly. As long as you don't pretend I'm more than I am. And I won't pretend this is more than it is. That's all I'm asking. Then we understand each other. We ordered food neither of us ate much of. We discussed logistics, the cohabitation trial, the timeline, the public-facing appearances required by the contract. He spoke clearly and efficiently. I took notes on my phone. It felt like a very civilized business meeting between two people carefully not acknowledging that their lives had just been handed to each other like lost luggage. At the end, when we were putting on our coats in that specific silence of two people who have run out of professional things to say, he paused. "For what it's worth," Haeon said, "I don't think of you the way you think I do." I looked at him. "You don't know how I think you think of me." "No," he said. "But I know you've already decided." He left first. I stood in the cedar-scented room for a moment longer, alone, with his last sentence sitting in the air like something that hadn't finished happening yet. I picked up my bag. I told myself, firmly, that it meant nothing. I almost believed it. Nobody tells you that living with a stranger is mostly made of small sounds. The click of a door handled carefully so it doesn't wake you. Water running at odd hours. Footsteps that stop, then continue, then stop again outside a room like someone thought about knocking and decided against it. I learned the rhythm of Jung Haeon before I learned anything real about him. The pattern of him, the negative space he left in a house that had probably never had anyone quiet enough to notice. I moved into the East Wing on a Sunday with 2 suitcases and a box of books. A staff member showed me the room. Haeon was not home. There was no note, no message, just a clean space and a key card on the dresser, which told me everything I needed to know about how this was going to go. I thought, I'm good at invisible. I've had years of practice. The first morning I came downstairs early, before 7, because I couldn't sleep in a new place. The kitchen was empty. I made myself coffee, drank it standing at the counter, and left. The second morning I came down at the same time and found a second cup already sitting on the counter beside the machine. Still warm. No note. No Haeon anywhere in sight. I stood there looking at it for a long moment. Then I picked it up and drank it. It was black, no sugar, not how I took my coffee, but I drank every drop because it felt important not to waste it. It felt important in a way I couldn't fully explain. That was how our first ritual began. Never discussed, never acknowledged, simply repeated every morning until it became the quietest, strangest promise I had ever been part of. 3 weeks in, I started learning the real shape of him. He worked too late. Not the glamorous kind of overwork that people perform for admiration, but the grinding, reluctant kind that meant he was still at his desk at midnight because stopping meant sitting alone with his own thoughts. I knew that kind. I recognized it from the inside. He didn't sleep well. I could hear it, the muffled sound of him moving through the wall we shared, never settled, never fully quiet. Some nights I lay awake on my side of the wall and thought about knocking. I never did. It wasn't my place. But I thought about it. What I hadn't expected was that he was watching too. One evening I was reading in the common sitting room, genuinely absorbed, and I looked up to find him in the doorway holding a glass of water with the specific expression of someone who had been standing there longer than they intended. "Sorry," he said, not sounding sorry. "You looked, I wasn't watching. I was passing through." "You've been standing there for about 4 minutes," I said. He didn't deny it. He came and sat in the chair across from me instead, which surprised me enough that I closed my book. "You do that," he said. "Make yourself small." "I'm not small. I'm just not taking up extra space." "That's the same thing." I didn't have an answer for that. So I asked instead, "Why aren't you sleeping?" He looked at his glass. "Why aren't you?" "New place. New sounds." I adjust slowly. I paused. "You don't have that excuse." Something in his jaw shifted, not quite a smile, not quite not one either. "No," he said. "I don't." We sat in silence for a while, but it was a different kind of silence than before. Less like two strangers tolerating proximity and more like two people choosing, carefully, to stay in the same room. The twist came on a Wednesday, and it came from the most ordinary direction. I was sorting through some contract documents on the dining table when I found a folder I hadn't put there. It had my name on the tab, Park Siwon, contingency file, and it was sitting open like someone had been reading it and walked away mid-page. My profile. My background assessment. My Omega designation report. And at the bottom, In handwriting that was careful and slightly cramped, Haeon's handwriting, I had already learned. A single line in the margin beside my psychological evaluation. This is inaccurate. The evaluation said, subject displays low emotional expectation, suggesting minimal compatibility investment. Low-risk pairing candidate. He had underlined low emotional expectation and written beside it, this is inaccurate. I stood there holding the folder until my hands steadied. I put it back exactly where I found it. I never mentioned it. But that night at dinner, another accidental shared meal, the third that week, I looked at him across the table and asked, what did you want when you were younger? Before all the arrangement talk. He looked up. The question had caught him. A dog, he said finally. I wanted a dog. My father said alphas didn't need comfort animals. The pause. I wanted someone to talk to who wasn't measuring me. Something cracked open, very gently, behind my ribs. I wanted to be someone's first choice, I said. Just once. Not because I was useful. Not because I was available. Just, wait. He looked at me for a long time with dark, careful eyes. That's not too much to want, he said quietly. No, I agreed. But wanting it and getting it are very different things. He didn't answer. But he didn't look away either, and the space between us felt suddenly smaller than the table suggested. I picked up my chopsticks. My heart was doing something it had no business doing. I told myself it was just warmth. Just proximity. Just two lonely people sharing meals and coffee because the alternative was silence. I told myself that right up until the moment he reached across the table and quietly moved the serving dish closer to my side without being asked. It was such a small thing. It absolutely wrecked me. I have a very specific talent for ruining good things before they ruin me first. I don't do it on purpose. It's more like a reflex. The way your hand pulls back from heat before your brain registers the danger. The moment something starts to feel safe, some older, quieter part of me sounds an alarm. Don't settle in. Don't get comfortable. You know how this ends. For exactly 11 days after the dinner, I ignored that alarm completely. 11 days of morning coffee and accidental meals. Of him reading in the same room without requiring conversation. Of small, weightless moments that I collected privately and told myself meant nothing while knowing, in the place where honest things live, that they meant everything. Then I went downstairs for water on a Wednesday night and the alarm became a confirmation. It was past 11. The house was mostly dark. I had almost reached the kitchen when I heard his voice through the cracked sitting room door. Low, controlled, the tone he used when he was managing something carefully. I stopped. I should have kept walking. I didn't. The optics are not my concern right now, Hyung. The pause. Someone speaking on the other end, fast and pressured. Because the contract is already in motion. It can't be undone cleanly. His voice dropped lower. Does it matter? He's compliant. He's not going to cause problems. That's what we need right now, stability, not drama. The word landed like something physical. Compliant. I stood in the dark hallway with my hand flat against the wall and felt the 11 days dissolve. Just like that. Quietly, the way good things always seem to go, not with noise, but with a slow, certain draining. He's compliant. He's not going to cause problems. I was a strategic asset. A calm variable in an already messy equation. I was the spare who didn't complain, and that, apparently, was my greatest quality. I went back upstairs without the water. I did not cry. I was very calm. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark and I thought, of course. Of course. You knew this. You signed the contract. You saw the folder with your name on the tab. You are Park Siwon, contingency file, low-risk pairing candidate. You knew exactly what you were. The problem was that somewhere between the coffee on the counter and the serving dish moved closer to my side, I had forgotten. I didn't make that mistake again. I became, with great precision, exactly what he described. Compliant. Unproblematic. Present in all the ways the contract required, absent in every way that mattered. I answered questions fully. I attended the 2 scheduled public appearances that week with a pleasant expression and appropriate proximity. I was, by every measurable standard, a perfectly functioning arrangement partner. I stopped lingering in the kitchen. I took my coffee upstairs. I chose the smaller sitting room when I read, the one without the chair he usually used. I was polite in the way that a closed door is polite. Technically open to visitors, but the message is clear enough. Haeon noticed in 4 days. I had expected a week. Did I do something? We were in the hallway, passing each other between rooms. He had stopped deliberately. His expression was careful, measured, but underneath it something was pulling tight. No, I said. Everything is fine. You've been. I've been what? He paused. Choosing. Elsewhere. I'm right here. I smiled. It was a good smile. I had practiced that particular smile for years. I have some documents to finish. Excuse me. I walked away. He let me. But I felt his eyes on my back the entire length of the hallway, and it took everything I had not to slow down. Then Jihan came back. And everything caught fire. It broke as a news alert on my phone. I was eating breakfast alone when the notification appeared. Lee Jihan returns to Seoul. Releases statement on Young engagement. I made a mistake I intend to correct. I read it 3 times. Then I opened the article. There were photos, Jihan at a press event, poised and carefully sorrowful, the kind of beautiful that cameras loved. The statement was elegant and ruthless. He had acted impulsively. He had realized his error. He had the deepest respect for Jung Haeon and hoped for the opportunity to speak honestly. The comments were immediate. He wants Haeon back. Will Haeon take him? Haeon deserves better. Jihan is only back because the foreign alpha didn't work out. I put my phone face down on the table. My food went cold. This was the plot twist I had not written into my careful, managed expectations. The first choice returning, newly repentant, publicly reaching. And suddenly my position felt not just secondary but temporary. A placeholder between Jihan leaving and Jihan coming back. Haeon said nothing about it that evening. Nothing the next morning. The coffee still appeared on the counter but I didn't touch it. I made my own, upstairs, with a small kettle I'd quietly purchased so I wouldn't have to come down at all. By the 3rd day of silence, I had convinced myself that silence was its own kind of answer. He found me in the small sitting room that night with the expression of someone who had run out of patience with being patient. Stop, he said. I'm just reading. Siwon. My name in his mouth, sharp and quiet and very serious. Stop. I closed my book slowly. Looked up. His jaw was set, his eyes dark, and he was looking at me like I was something he was afraid of losing, which made no sense, so I dismissed it. You're not going to lose anything, I said, keeping my voice even. If you want to speak to Jihan, that's your right. I'm not, I won't make it complicated. Something broke open in his expression. Is that what you think is happening? I think he's back. I think he's asking. I think I heard you tell your brother that I'm compliant and not a problem, and that's clearly the ceiling of my value here, so. Stop. He crossed the room in 4 steps and sat down directly across from me, elbows on his knees, face level with mine. Close. Too close to look away from. You heard half a conversation and built a verdict from it. I heard enough. My brother wanted to dissolve the contract. He called you a liability. He said the arrangement was damaging the family's public image and we should cut it quietly before Jihan's return made it worse. His voice was controlled but only barely. I told him no. I told him you were not a liability. I told him you were not going to cause problems because you are the most straightforward, decent person I have dealt with in years, and I said it to protect you, not to diminish you. The room was very quiet. Oh, I said. Yes. He exhaled, long, exhausted, like he'd been holding it for days. Oh. I looked at him. Really looked, at the tension around his eyes, the tight line of his shoulders, the particular expression of someone who has been misunderstood by the one person they needed most to understand them. It was an expression I recognized. I had worn it my entire life. I thought. My voice came out smaller than I intended. I thought I was just the convenient solution. I know what you thought. He held my gaze and didn't flinch. You were wrong. The wall I had spent 11 days carefully rebuilding developed, very suddenly, a crack straight down the middle. Neither of us spoke for a long time after that. But this time, The silence didn't feel like a closed door. It felt like one, very slowly opening. The crack in the wall didn't heal overnight. That's the thing nobody tells you about walls. The ones you build around yourself, the ones assembled quietly over years of being second and sufficient and never quite enough. They don't come down because someone says the right thing. They come down slowly, reluctantly, in pieces, while you stand there simultaneously grateful and terrified and furious at yourself for having built them so thick in the first place. I went to bed that night with his words sitting in my chest like something warm I didn't fully trust yet. You were wrong. I wanted to believe him. That wanting scared me more than the misunderstanding ever had. 3 days passed in a strange, suspended quiet. Not the cold distance of before, something different. Fragile. Like we had both said too much and not enough, and neither of us knew the next step, so we stood very still and waited to see what happened to the ground beneath us. The coffee still appeared every morning. I started coming back downstairs to drink it. Small things. But small things were how we had built everything so far. On the 4th night I couldn't sleep. Genuinely couldn't, not the managed wakefulness of someone avoiding their thoughts, but the raw, unwilling kind that pins you to the ceiling of your own mind. I got up at 2 in the morning and went downstairs without a reason, without a plan. I sat down on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets and my knees pulled up, and I just stopped holding it together. Not dramatically. I didn't make noise. But my eyes filled and then spilled over and I sat there in the dark kitchen at 2 in the morning coming apart in the quietest way I knew how, which was the only way I had ever learned. I didn't hear him come downstairs. I just looked up and he was there, standing in the kitchen doorway in a plain dark shirt, hair slightly disordered from sleep that clearly hadn't taken, looking at me with an expression that had no performance in it whatsoever. He didn't say, "Are you okay?" We both knew I wasn't. He crossed the kitchen and sat down on the floor beside me. His shoulder pressed lightly against mine. He didn't reach for me, didn't crowd me, just sat there. Present. Solid. Like a person who had decided that wherever I was, that was where he was going to be. After a long moment he said, very quietly, "Tell me." So I did. All of it. The contingency contract and what it felt like to sign your name to a document that essentially said you are the backup plan. The banquet where I'd stood by the east corridor with water instead of champagne, feeling like a footnote in someone else's story. The 11 days of morning coffee and accidental dinners that had made me forget, dangerously, what I was supposed to be. The phone call. The way one word, compliant, had confirmed every fear I had carefully arranged my entire personality around. "I know it's not rational," I said, voice unsteady. "I know you explained it. But it's not really about the phone call, Haeon. It's about the fact that I have spent my whole life being the version of myself that doesn't inconvenience anyone, and I was so good at it that even I forgot there might be something else underneath." He was quiet through all of it. Not the silence of someone waiting for their turn to speak, but the silence of someone actually listening, which is rarer than it should be. When I finished he said, "I looked for you. After you looked away. At the banquet." I turned my head. "What?" "You looked at me and then you looked away, and I told myself it was nothing." His voice was careful, like he was handling something he hadn't said out loud before and wasn't sure yet of its weight. "But I kept finding you in the room. Every time I looked up. And when you left, I noticed the specific moment you were gone." He paused. I have never noticed the specific moment a stranger left a room before. My heart was doing something it had no language for. "You never said anything," I whispered. "I had an engagement. I had obligations." His jaw tightened slightly. "And you were so determined to be manageable that I didn't know how to reach you without you deciding it was pity. That hit me somewhere accurate and uncomfortable." "Is it?" I asked. "Pity?" He turned and looked at me directly, close, in the dark kitchen, with no performance between us and nowhere to hide. "I moved the serving dish," he said simply. I stared at him. "That's your answer? I don't do small things out of pity. I don't do them at all, usually." Something shifted in his expression, softer, more unguarded than I had ever seen it. "I did them for you specifically. That's the answer." The last piece of the wall came down. The next morning Haeon called his family's legal team. Not to report in. not to manage optics. He told them, clearly and without negotiation, that the contingency contract was being dissolved and that Jihan's return had no bearing on anything going forward. I heard him from the hallway, voice calm, final, the tone of someone who had already decided and was simply informing. When he came out and found me waiting, he said, "I want to refile. Different paperwork. Not contingency. Not obligation." He held my gaze. "If you want that too." "You're sure?" I asked. "This time you're choosing, not the contract." "I'm choosing," he said. Specifically. I had wanted that my entire life. To be someone's specific choice. Not the backup. Not the safe option. Not the Omega who didn't cause problems. So yes. We filed the new paperwork on a Wednesday at a quiet government office. No banquet, no announcement, no legal team hovering nearby. Just the two of us and 2 pens and documents that said chosen instead of contingency. Walking out afterward, he found my hand and held it like it was something he intended to keep doing for a very long time. I didn't say anything. Neither did he. But somewhere between the office door and the car, I exhaled, fully, completely, for what felt like the first time in years. "You know," I said, "you could have just talked to me from the beginning." "So could you," he said. "I was the spare. I didn't think I was allowed." He stopped walking, turned to face me with the afternoon light behind him and that expression, the one with no performance, no management, just him. "You were never spare," he said. "Then what was I?" He squeezed my hand once, simple and certain. "Early," he said. "You were just early." And I believed him.